Welcome in to the Lady Vol Basketball Fever podcast, part of Vol Basketball Fever. We're a show dedicated exclusively to talking about the Lady Vols and news around the program. Tune in to hear thoughts and discussions from experts who cover the Lady Vols on a daily basis. Now, here's a new episode of the Lady Vol Basketball Fever podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the Lady Vol Basketball Fever podcast. I am Nathanael Rutherford, joined by special guest once again here on the Lady Vol Basketball Fever, and that is Maria Cornelius. Of course, you all know her. She's been on the show several times and very gracious every time she appears on here, but she covers Lady Vol basketball for 247, and also, I just forgot the name of the other thing you write for, Maria, but you also write for another publication, Knox News Daily, right? Correct?
GoVols247 and Knox TN today. I picked that up starting in March. It's been a really good spot for a column every week. It's Knox TN, like TennesseeTNtoday.com. It's a hyper-local site and run by people who have a lot of journalism experience in Knoxville. And I have cats. Y'all know that. They're decided they'll just participate tonight, apparently.
Yeah, it's fine. It's going to be a participation episode because it's a mailbag episode for our listeners and I guess social media followers and stuff too want to send in questions. Had done plenty of mailbag episodes just kind of in general, also specifically about the men's team, so I thought why not do a Lady Vol specific one? Why not have Maria on here because she's the best one to have on in my opinion to do an episode like this. So I'm going to do a mailbag episode, so thank you to all of you who sent in questions. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see your tweet. Actually, I have one DM as well from somebody, but you'll see your tweets on screen. So if you want to, in the future episodes, want to see yourself, quote unquote, on screen, send in questions. We're happy to always answer questions, even if it's not a mailbag episode, and discuss it as well on a Lady Vol episode or on a Vol episode. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Nathaniel. This is Lady Vol Basketball Fever, part of Vol Basketball Fever. Give this video a like and share it around as well, and subscribe to the channel while you're here, and also subscribe to the podcast if you prefer the audio medium for the way you get the show. We really appreciate all of your all's feedback, all of your all's questions, everything you interact with us and do us here in the off season as well, because it's pretty thick of things in the off season, so we really appreciate it. We're at Vol Hoops Fever on Twitter and Vol Basketball Fever on Facebook. Well, Maria, we got a bunch of questions, as I said. Going to start off here, combine kind of one from Beth Edwards at UT Lady Vols fan on Twitter, and also from KBS, who's at KBS51 on Twitter. Kind of combine, I guess, two of theirs for a little bit, because KBS also asked a different one, but I'm going to combine KBS is about matchups for the season, and Beth Edwards asking about out-of-conference opponents. So going to kind of combine those and say what matchups, both in conference and SEC-wise, are we both looking forward to the most, because the schedules have more or less been set. We don't know the dates so far right now for the SEC games, but Maria, we just had the Lady Vols announce, I want to say sometime last week, about the out-of-conference home games that the Lady Vols are having, and my goodness, it's going to be a huge slate of home games in Thompson Bowling Arena for the out-of-conference matchups, because it's UConn for one of them. You have Virginia Tech. You also have, I guess I'll get the dates out there. So you have UConn, date is to be decided. You have Indiana November 14th, Virginia Tech on December 4th, and UCF December 14th. So obviously I think of those, four, UConn's the biggest one, but, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on, the other three. But what are your opinions to some of the out-of-conference and in-conference matchups looking forward to the most? Because I looked at, when they announced the SEC opponents, not the schedule per se, because again, we don't have the dates and times. Lady Vols, again, not an easy schedule in SEC play for them. This time they do get to host South Carolina, the reigning national champions, rather than going to there. But still, it's not an easy SEC slate of games for the Lady Vols either.
And obviously there's more home games to come out of conference. There'll be, early November. There'll be, Thanksgiving week or around Thanksgiving week. Of course, they'll be in the Bahamas, and there'll be some loaded teams down there. They know their pool. They're not sure who they'll play yet. Also, you've got a whole bunch of December games that still have to be scheduled for non-conference. And then there's, several road games. They got to go to Texas, go to Stanford. Indiana, as you know, ranked team last year, very good team. Virginia Tech, ranked team last year, very good team. I think that too soon ACC poll. I mean, I think they had Virginia Tech top 10, top 11. I mean, it's
Wow.
Indiana's right up there. UCF, they gave Tennessee all it could handle. They are a very good defensive team, and they bring a ton of pressure. They are a hard team to play. That have a new coach this year, and so I think Satia Messer is there now. So they're going to be fired up to come to Thompson Bowling Arena. Playing at the Summit remains a big deal, and beating Tennessee home or away remains a big deal. So it will be a fun, very fun home schedule this year. And UConn, we don't know yet. You kind of guess based on previous years. It's January, early February. If that series were to continue, and I don't know what it's going to do, this will end the series that had been set up.
Right.
I say move that thing to November or December. That is not a matchup that Tennessee needs in the middle of the SEC. The SEC is stacked top to bottom. Mm-hmm. I've always thought Tennessee could benefit a little bit more from taking that bye week. It didn't Pat usually didn't care about the bye week, but there were maybe two teams in the SEC that could beat Tennessee at that point. So right now everybody's tough. So I would love to see that if that series continued, and if it does, fine. If it doesn't, fine. I would like to see it move to preseason schedule, not right in the middle of the SEC. The SEC is simply too tough. And what are we talking about? 2-3 years? Here comes Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
You don't need another, top matchup the SEC is hard enough. Tennessee plays in the best women's basketball conference in the country. And that needs to be the focus in January and February. But in terms of what I'm looking forward to, I guess at home, Connecticut's always one you look forward to, particularly this time. Last time Connecticut came, it was pandemic. You could only have a few thousand in there. That few thousand still made a lot of noise, but it would be nice to see Thompson Bowling be that atmosphere that it used to be for a Tennessee-Connecticut game. So in just terms of interest and a big matchup, obviously interested in that one. I'm really happy to see Indiana coming in. That is a great series. It was a home and home. It started in 2020 because both Tennessee and Indiana had a pandemic cancellation.
Yep.
They needed a last-minute ad. Tennessee agreed to go to Indiana. I believe that was in December, and then Indiana agreed to come back here. Now, they couldn't do it last year because their schedule was already set. So, I would love to see that series stay in place. That is Tennessee. That's a good place to play on the road too. Have a Midwest presence. So, but I guess what game am I looking forward to the most? Whenever the first one is, I want to see the full schedule. I know there'll be one exhibition, and then I'm trying to think. I think I saw the date the other day. The earliest a team can play, I've already forgotten the date. Was it November 7th? Or no, that's too early. November 10th. I've got to look it back up. There's a first date you could actually have a game. It's going to be close to November 14th. What was it last year? Now I've got myself all.
I know
November 10th, Southern Illinois. So I don't know yet. We don't know. Maybe that November 14th game is the first one, but I could see Tennessee trying to slip something in before that if it could.
Yeah, I feel like they maybe should too. I don't know that you would necessarily want to open up your season. Not that you want to shy away from competition, but typically teams open up with a smaller conference opponent and do that before they hop into a big Power 5, Power 6 school. So I think you're right. I think they'll try to slip in maybe an in-state school or something like that where they can just host a team in Thompson Bowling at the Summit to play them first before they start that game on November 14th. But you're right, that's pretty close to I guess kind of the first where they start playing games. So we'll see. But yeah, there's you're not going to lack any big time games this year for the Lady Vols. And again, a lot of those, that's an impressive home slate of games on non-conference. Like, again, you look at the in-conference games too, and the Lady Vols have some really intriguing, really potentially just really fun, entertaining home games in the SEC as well. And of course, obviously road games too. I think they play Yeah, they play LSU this year on the road too, so that's going to be tough this year because LSU look like they're going to take a step back, and then all of a sudden, just like they did in every sport this offseason, killed it in the transfer portal. Kim Mulkey did a great job. LSU baseball did a great job in the transfer portal. Football, I feel like they cleaned up in the transfer portal too, so they did a good job of kind of retooling that roster. And that kind of, I guess not. I'll save the roster questions, I guess, here in just a second. I want to get to KBS's second question that they asked on Twitter, along with the ones asking us about the matchups we're most looking forward to. So what can Tennessee do to keep this coaching staff intact for years to come? I think that's a really good question, Maria, because this staff is a very unique and I think really good blend of experience, youth, and I think personalities. Obviously, Coach Sam Williams, really fun on TikTok, really fun on Twitter, but she's been around the block for a while, and she's been coaching for a long time. A lot of experience, was a head coach that Tennessee was able to go take away from a head coaching position to come be an assistant, and of course head of recruiting at Tennessee as well. Coach Joy Corby, she's obviously I think very talented. I think she has a very high ceiling and a bright future ahead of her. And of course John Harper, does he always stay with Coach Kellie Harper at the school? I imagine they probably will, but maybe he gets a head coaching position offer somewhere that he can't pass up. So I think it's a great question.
Yeah, I can't see him.
Yeah, I can't either.
I can't see him leave, especially with two very young children still.
Right.
I think we can count on John staying put.
Yeah, I think he does. I think he's probably the one constant. I look at Sam and Joy, and I think that's what can you do and how long can you keep them here? Because I think those two are just really, really good assistant coaches, and I think it's really maybe a matter of time before Coach Williams gets another shot at being a head coach somewhere. I think it's a matter of time too before Coach Joy gets a shot, because she was named to a list of I think one of the top 25, top 20 young assistants in women's basketball or something like that. So I mean, she I think has a bright future ahead of her. So I mean, you do everything you can to keep them, but I don't know how long this assistant coaching staff will be able to stick around with this new, what they are right now, because they're going to be in high demand, I think, especially if they, Lady Vols go out and have the year that you're expecting to have this year.
It's an excellent question, and I'll quote Pat Summitt to some extent. She used to say, "If nobody wants my assistant coaches, they must not be very, very good." So she was aware that like Nikki Caldwell, she went to UCLA. Mickey DeMoss, she ended up becoming a head coach. I believe Joy obviously is I think in her, I'm going to guess just when she graduated college, she's probably 30s, early 30s, right? I think she graduated 2010. So
according to her bio on UT's website, she was born in 1988. So yeah, about mid 30s, just about.
Okay. She's a very, I could see her, moving up, like you said, to a head coach. Samantha Williams, she's done it before. Obviously, if she went back to it, it would be a much bigger school. I do think right now, both are very happy here. Both enjoy. Tennessee is a big deal. I have heard about, coaches leave here as they climb up the ladder, and you definitely want to climb up that ladder. But they realize sometimes when you get there, what you left. And the fan support is not there. The administrative support is not there. So it would have to be a great fit, because both of them would deserve a great fit. The biggest way you keep your staff intact, and this is more on Tennessee administration as a whole, is you pay them well.
Yep.
Tennessee lost Jolette Law when she was here. She went to South Carolina. She's still at South Carolina because South Carolina could pay her more, and Tennessee couldn't match it. She also had her parents live there. Her mother has now passed, but her mother, she wanted to be closer to her mother. So you had emotional reasons too. There can always be family situations that we don't know about. So it's a very good question. And it's hard to believe they've only been here one season. It feels like both of them have been here forever. They've only made it through one full season. Samantha Williams on TikTok is just fun to watch. They're in a good place, and I hope they can keep this staff intact for quite some time, not only because they're being paid well, because they're being very successful. At the same time, Pat never stood in the way of her assistants, and I can't imagine Kellie doing it either. When you have an opportunity that makes sense for whatever reason, you're running your own program, there could be a family matter, you need to be closer here, whatever reason, or you don't want to be an assistant coach, all the time, or associate head coach. You want to move up, and that's why you're doing this. So, Kellie would get that of all people. She started as an administrative assistant coach. This is her fourth head coaching stop. She certainly understands that her coaches are going to want to pursue, their careers, and that direction could go in various places. But for now, everybody seems fine. Everybody's on task. Everybody's on track. Everybody has one goal, and it's one of the best, collective coaching staffs that Tennessee's had in a while, in terms of everybody seems to know their role. And head coaches, I'll say this, and Pat was the same way. Head coaches are not easy to coach, to play for or to work for. They don't get to be head coaches without being driven and competitive and a little bit off. I've always said reporters and coaches actually get along so well because they're both just really a little bit off. Nobody really thinks, what I'll do for a living? Work 7 days a week and never be off. I think that sounds great. So, and reporters are kind of the same way, because there's never really any downtime. When the season ends, you kind of recharge a minute, but next thing you know, it's cranking right back up again. So it's a great staff, and like I said, I love that question. You keep them intact by relationships, challenges, giving them a voice, which they have. Listening to them, respecting them, rewarding them, and making sure they have the opportunity to grow. And when they see the opportunity to take that plunge, then I like Pat. I think you get behind them. You wish them well, and they're always, like Pat says, Lady Vols for life.
Yeah, you make a great point there about how Pat kind of viewed it, and I think obviously with Kellie playing under her, I think she has taken a lot of tutelage from her, and I think you're right. I don't think she's going to be one that's going to get in the way of her assistants from moving on. And like you said, it's a compliment to you and your program and coaching staff if other schools are trying to poach them away from you. Before we move on to the next question, by the way, the award, or the, I guess, recognition that Coach McCorvey got was the most impactful high major assistant coaches in Division I women's basketball. That was by the Silver Waves Media. So that was the actual kind of recognition that she got for her reputation. Again, she actually just had a birthday. Her birthday was July 15th, so she just turned 34 and is already, I think, like I said, a rising star in the women's basketball world, and this assistant coaching and potentially future head coach as well. But Maria,
a great resume. She coached at her alma mater, St. John's, the Michigan. I'm doing this by memory. Florida State and Tennessee. That's a great. It's a great resume, and she's quite young for this, So, and then Samantha, she just, her experience speaks for itself. I do believe that she wanted to play here. She was recruited by Tennessee, and Tennessee ended up taking Lisa Harrison out of Kentucky. I think she recognizes the almost full circle of being here. Now, I'm not saying she won't be a sought after, head coach, but I think right now she's in her element, and she's very happy to be in Knoxville. And I want her here just because her TikToks are just must view.
She is great on there. Her personality, she has just a fantastic personality. I wish that she would be able to I actually get to meet and talk with the media more, because she just, I love hearing her talk and the things she says and how she delivers it. So let's move on, I guess, to the next. I guess I'll combine these two here. There's one that's on Twitter, and then one that we got from Julia Gregg from a message on Twitter as well. So I'll kind of combine the two. And there's also another one from Julia that I'll ask in a second too. But this one on Twitter in the mentions was from Tennessee Thunder at TN Thunder B-Ball on Twitter. Who will make the most impact coming off the bench in your opinion? And then Julia Gregg, who is at Julia Gregg 3 on Twitter, said, who do you see as an early starting five and who is the sixth person this year? I think, you can be the sixth woman off the bench and not be maybe the most impact coming off the bench, but typically if you're the sixth man of the year award and sixth woman of the year award are awarded to the most impactful bench player. So that's why I thought just kind of combine the two from Tennessee Thunder and Julia. That's a question that you and I think Maria have kind of danced around multiple times on the podcast already of trying to figure out a starting five, trying to figure out, who's going to be that main five rotation, then who's the sixth player off the bench. Not an easy one to figure out. And again, I think we've also talked about that it could also depend a lot on matchups, because you can go bigger for more of a game, you can go smaller for more of a game, you can have a mix, you can be more 3-point heavy, you can be more post heavy. So I think it kind of depends. I think nailing down a starting five, again, assuming everyone's healthy, I think you're going to obviously have in Horston and Tamari Key. That's no question to me. I think personally Jordan Walker starts at the 2, because I think she just is experienced in this system, has been here for several years at this point, and has proven that she can play at a really high level. So you put her at the 2 where she's probably more comfortable as well. And then I think you're looking at 2 of the transfers, and I just can't imagine Rakia Jackson not starting. And then at the point guard is where you put in Jazz Powell, because that's your true point guard you brought in to man that spot. I think that'll be kind of the main starting five. That'll be the 5 players who maybe get the most minutes, Tamari, depending on foul trouble and stuff too, and maybe how Jillian Hollingshed comes along. But I'm very interested in your thoughts, Maria, because I think that'll be the starting five, and I don't know that you will have more that you'll add to that, and maybe there's someone else I'm maybe not thinking of that could be in the starting five. But I'm intrigued to see who you think is the sixth person, kind of the one off the bench who gets the most minutes, maybe make spot starts here and there, because there are a lot of options for that on the roster. I mean, you look at Caroline Strickland, who started to come on last year. You look at Brooklyn Miles, Sarah Puckett. Really, those two I think played a lot of key minutes for the Lady Vols last year. Even Kaya Wynn, if her offense comes along, she's someone who could really play a lot more. Tessa Darby is someone who played a lot, and it was a 3-point specialist and started a lot of games last year. Can't forget Marta Suarez, who missed all of last season but was a projected starter before the year. And again, you also have Jillian Hollingshed, who's going to play because she's going to spell Tamari Key and also could possibly play the 4 while Key plays the 5. So, I mean, the question of who's the most impact off the bench and who's the sixth player, I think that's the tougher one than even the starting 5. The starting 5, I think you can kind of nail down for the most part. But, man, that person who gets the 6th most minutes, I don't know. That's going to be a tough one to try to predict.
It's hard to do it, too, because, I mean, right now, only thing you hear are, you could see some video clips. I mean, players put them up. Tennessee puts them up. You hear chatter. I mean, I've been around this program 25 years, 30, I don't know, almost 30. You hear chatter. I mean, chatter will get back to me about who's looking really good. I will say that with the caveat every time. It's July. Tell me who's looking good in October, November. But it's still interesting to hear. And you got a lot of kids. I mean, apparently then pickup games are not, coaches don't, but those are what the kids do on their own. They do the pickup games. And I think I love that, where they just play. They call their own fouls. That's not open, of course. I mean, their friends can come in, or, whoever they want to, bring in, or some of them. I mean, Alexis Hornbuckle used to go over to the rec center and just watch some games with some guys and jump in and start playing with them. This was pre-Pratt Pavilion being open. So those, I mean, the chatter coming out of those is that these kids are going after it. I do think, I mean, you look at, the one starter, they lost technically 2 starters, Ray Burrell and Alexis Dye. So it's Jordan Horston and Tamari Key, Rakia Jackson. I mean, those 3 are just easy picks. I mean, those are just easy picks. I mean, Tamari's the greatest shot blocker in Tennessee history now. She's 6'7" to me. She looks 6'7" to me. I saw her the other day at Orange Mountain Designs, and I'm like, I think you grew. You're at least 6'6", we know, but I think she is just, I mean, she just goes and goes and goes when you look up at her. So, Jillian Hollingshed, I was able to see her a little bit at that camp. I mean, they were coaching kids. They weren't playing, but she's every inch of 6'5". I'm not, she's obviously coming back from, the knee injury. She had the, scope surgery, not a major surgery. So, but apparently she can play. She can flat out play. So I'm not saying she's in the starting lineup, but I'm not going to say she's not right now. I think she's going to make a case for it. But like I said, it's July. Then, I mean, the two players that were in it last year, Tess Darby, Jordan Walker, those players are competitive ball players. It's not like they're just going to give it up. Like, okay, I'll just, you can start over me. They're going to fight to keep it. So Kellie's got one heck of a good problem to have, in that while she's got to put 5 on the floor to open the game, and fans will seize on that. Well, you know how fans are going to break down every starting lineup, every matchup. She can make she's almost got 2 starting 5s. She can, depending on what she needs at what matchup, could at some cases determine what that starting 5 looks like. If it's a big team, if it's a quick team. I mean, Brooklyn Miles, she showed that she could change the tone and tenor of a game. Kaya Wynn, she's a sophomore now. She's more confident. She knows what she's doing. She knows how she fits in. I mean, there's going to be a lot of players that have the potential to start and the potential to contribute, and narrowing that down to 5 is going to be hard. There's 3 obvious, Rakia Jackson, Jordan Horston, Tamari Key. I mean, that's plus, does Kellie lean more toward experience?
Right.
And we hadn't even talked about Justine Passat.
I was about to mention her. We have a 5-star we hadn't talked about.
Center court. I mean, she's going to get on the court. I think the great thing right now is Kellie does not have to start a freshman. They can ease in. If you're good enough to start as a freshman, fine. Mm-hmm. But I think we've talked about this before. I think freshmen can get tossed in, and it can impede them when they're being asked to do too much too soon. I think Renaya Davis was a good case of that. She had to do too much too soon. And obviously she developed into a very good player. I think if she had been able to play behind somebody her freshman year, it may have helped her development a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I think even Jordan Horston, you would look at just the turnover issues that she had her freshman year because she had to play so much and she had to handle the ball so much. If she'd been able to, like you said, learn some more, she wouldn't have had those issues, I don't think, as early as she had in her career.
If you need the smaller, quicker guards at point, you've got Brooklyn, you've got Jasmine Powell. If you've got a tall team, Jordan Horston can play point. She can always shift over if you need to. She can play 1, 2, or 3, really, which is an incredibly versatile player. Jillian definitely can play 5, definitely can play 4. I mean, she could be a stretch 4. I just can't. Now, what size? I'm going here strictly by size, not how I think would start. I'm imagining if you had Tamari Key and Jillian Hollingshed on the court at the same time at 6'6" and 6'5", and then Rakia Jackson 6'2", Jordan Horston 6'2", and then you could go with a standard point guard. Or you could shift Horston to the. That's a huge team.
It's not fair to the opponents, is what it is.
And you can't double any of them. You can't double Tamari, or Jillian's going to come open. You can't double Rakia. You can't double Jordan. Jordan's too good a passer. You double her, she'll find the open person. You double Tamari, she'll kick back out to a 3-point shooter. In that lineup, the only thing I could see is maybe you want a pure 3-point shooter out there. Mm-hmm. Well, then you could start looking at who you've got that are somebody. Sarah Puckett, Tess Darby. Justine Passat. That's a great question. I jokingly asked Kellie that, and she just laughed. But I think she says sometimes I think about it on the way to the game. She'll mix it up if she needs to. Mm-hmm. So I've always said, and you've heard me say this here before, who starts matters to the fans. Who finishes, to me, is more important.
Yes. We've said
Who's
that.
on the floor in crunch time?
You and I have said that. I've said on the other show with Gene as well, talking about the men's team. It's more. It's not as important who is in there for the first 4 minutes. It's the most important who's in there for the last 4 minutes. So you look at the men's team last year, last 4 minutes of the game, it was almost always Kenny Chandler, Zakai Ziegler, Santiago Vescovi, Josiah Jordan James, and you had a five out there who, injuries changed kind of who that was sometimes, but that was your finishers. Zakai didn't start, but he finished. For the Lady Vols, it was a lot of times it was kind of the same starting five was the finishing, but a lot of times last year for Lady Vols, before injuries and stuff happened, it'd be Tamari, Ray, Jordan Horston, although those two didn't get to play with each other too much last year, unfortunately. Jordan Walker, and then usually Tessa Darby was the other one out there, but sometimes it ended up being Sarah Puckett, and sometimes it ended up being Brooklyn Miles as well because of just her defense and her intensity and her speed. So, but I would say a lot of times it was yeah, that's true. Alexis died. I don't.
I know, and I didn't even mention Caroline Striplin. I mean, she's a big body. Sophomores: Kaya Wynn, Brooklyn Miles, Caroline Striplin, Sarah Puckett. They're better as sophomores. Freshman year is overwhelming, but for all four, it wasn't. The moment wasn't too big. I mean, they stepped up in postseason. All four of them did. So they're entering this season with a lot of confidence and feeling, you're more comfortable. You know what traveling looks like. You know what's expected in the weight room. You know what's expected at practice. And it's a veteran team. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And we hadn't even talked about Jasmine Franklin. Because now, I mean, she had the knee injury in December, but I mean, she's an incredibly rangy, athletic post player that can rebound and I mean, this team, we thought they were a good rebounding team last year. This is a team that absolutely can own the glass. I mean, they just could be relentless. Alexis Dye, they're going to miss because you talk about somebody relentless on the glass. Somebody's got to be Alexis Dye. And I think Jasmine Franklin has the potential to be that kind of player on the glass. So,
yeah, I'm hoping she's recovered enough because, like you said, just watching her film and her stats from last year, she was, averaging a double-double basically last year, and I think was leading the country in rebounds before she got hurt, at least Division I, power conferences, whatever. But yeah, she's very talented. I hope her recovery has gone well. I think her and Justine are only two have not been able to get on the show that were new additions to the roster. So wish we had got both of them on there, but it's okay. I got a lot of other players. If y'all want to go back and rewatch those interviews, I got to talk to several of the new Lady Vols. So they all gave some good thoughts and opinions on why they came to Tennessee, which leads me into this question by Chad Kirk, which will also lead me into the last one by Julia in a second as well. But Chad Kirk, who's at KirkChad98 on Twitter, asked us, how has Kellie changed the culture of the program, since she has arrived, and what's the excitement you're hearing from the recruits that come visit and the feedback you're hearing from them of this coaching staff? So kind of throwing three questions in there and one, but they all kind of, I think, get to the same point of how has this coaching staff, specifically with Kellie Harper, who's been here, all I guess now 4 years on Knoxville, how has the culture changed of the program since she's arrived, and kind of what, how does that blend into what the recruits have saying? And I know from just me, obviously where you covered it more on the ground than I did, but I know I was still as a full-time media member when she got hired. I remember being at her opening press conference and thinking she has a lot of work ahead of her, but she has the right attitude. And I thought even then that she had a potentially bright future ahead of her, despite what maybe some detractors were saying about her time at, before she got to her last big school at NC State or whatever. I thought, she has the potential to do great things here. I know from talking to the players like Rakia and Jazz Powell that when I asked them kind of what led them to pick Tennessee, immediately they mentioned culture. Immediately they mentioned the family feel. I know that word gets thrown around a lot in college athletics, especially family. But it just talked about, I think Jazz said that she was greeted at the airport, and she wasn't greeted at the airport by any other visit she was on. Just the way the players talked about other players, the way the players talked about the coaches, the way the coaches talked to her. We heard the story of Justine when she had that interview. I don't remember when it was, but it was when she's obviously still in high school, and they're talking about why she chose Tennessee, about Kellie laying out the roadmap. It had this just big actual kind of map that she laid out with her and her family there, and talking about the roadmap of her career at Tennessee and kind of how they envisioned her being used at Tennessee and how how she could thrive at Tennessee. I think that to me, it just without trying to dog too much of what happened beforehand, I think it just for me being an outsider perspective, really paying a lot more close attention the last year or so, Maria, it's been like the culture isn't. It's a word that gets thrown out a lot. Family gets thrown out a lot, but I think this team, you don't have to be a psychologist to watch the videos and watch some of the interviews and things they say to know they legit care about each other. Like this is a legitimate tight knit culture that every coach dreams of having at their school, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, softball, tennis. Like if you're a coach of a team, you want you I think you aspire to have the kind of culture that I think Kellie Harper has established at Tennessee. And I think it can't be taken for granted, because not every team has that. Not every Tennessee team in the past has had that. Even some of the Pat teams, I don't imagine, had amazing culture. They always had an established culture because Pat did that. But you can't take for granted having a strong culture, and I think Kellie Harper has done in such a short time too, and especially dealing with COVID and stuff that she had to deal with. She had all the factors working against her, and yet she's, I think, got this team to bond together, and especially the core of the team the last year and this year. I think it's just a very strong core, and I think the culture has just been worked over, and to me, it's the strongest it's been in a very long time.
I agree. I want to shout out their academics too.
Yes.
I mean, they're top in the SEC. That's. I mean, Kellie said that was her. Obviously the way we compete on the court is a priority, but also the way we compete in the classroom. That does not mean that every player has to come in here, 4.0 and honor roll every semester. But you've got to. She puts a strong connection between do you compete in the classroom and on the court. So I want to shout out their academics too. You mentioned culture is one of those words that's becoming a buzzword that can be overused, but it has become readily apparent how important it is for a team and a team's success. Particularly and I'm not casting, judgment on any place this happened because I don't know the details, but we've had multiple high profile accounts of what players describe as a very difficult place to play, and with coaches being anywhere from verbally abusive to, throwing a basketball at a player. That style of coaching is gone. It's not going to work with these kids. And you either adjust or you get out of the game. I mean, the old, you can't put hands on a player. I'm not talking about around a hug or putting your hand on their shoulder, you cannot do things that I think have been hangovers from the past that have been allowed to happen. Parents aren't going to stand for it. I mean, look at Rickea Jackson. I mean, she was very upfront. Why did you leave Mississippi State? Culture. Just I wanted to make it work, and it would not work. When she was on her recruiting visit, her mother was watching team interaction, culture, coaches. So Kellie understands that, and that for a team to win big, you got to come together, and you've got to pull for each other. I think one thing the players said that they're saying this year is one unit, one goal. So stay together, stay focused. Now, that doesn't mean with any team you're not going to have episodes pop up. You don't put that many people, male or female, in one place for those many months where you're together almost 7 days a week and not have issues pop up. You can't. I mean, issues pop up in families.
Yep.
So, but I do think they have been the most disruptive. They are not one unity, one goal, one unit. My cats are just, all in it for themselves this whole evening. Like, we are the star of the house.
Yeah, they are not Kellie Harper approved teammates right now.
No, they are not being good teammates. Not to say, well, Puff is. She's over in her bed. So shout out to Puff. But I think Kellie saw that some things needed to be fixed. I mean, it was a splintered team, and losing will do that to a team. I mean, that team was losing in that last season before Kellie arrived. And if anything will torpedo culture, it is losses. And And you could see that players were, I mean, I go back to that Vanderbilt game that they lost at home. I mean, players were checked out on the court. I had never seen such on the court. Players were just in their own, like in a timeout, they were just standing. I mean, I'm like, this team is just, they're done. I mean, you could see it at that point that they were done. So, Kellie had to fix that. And part of that is your staff. And remarkably, I mean, she's already had 2 changes there and is rolled into, which is why that was a great question. This staff has bought into all of the culture and how things are done and also demanding. I mean, we've all seen that video clip. I think Sam or Lady Vols posted it again today with Kellie storming into that locker room. But good culture doesn't mean you're not tough and demanding. It means the players know when that moment is over, you care about them. You've got their back. You'll take care of them. It resonates a lot with parents. I mean, this is hard for parents, particularly when parents see these accounts of what's happening at other schools. I mean, the fear that your kid could be going through that and your kid's probably not going to tell you. They're, because they've been taught as athletes, you just suck it up and deal with it. But as far as recruits coming on campus, I've always said if Tennessee can get a recruit here, the chances of signing that player go up so much more because it is an impressive campus, particularly in the fall on football weekends and all the orange and all of the synergy on campus. I mean, there's a lot of buzz with Tennessee. Now, it's a tricky thing right now trying to deal with high school recruits with this new portal. And I don't know if you saw the suggestion that the 1 year, it won't even be the 1 year sit out thing. It'll just be whenever you could transfer 4 times if you want to.
Yep.
So that is where Kellie has excelled with that transfer portal because it has changed recruiting. At the same time, you want to build players through your program as high school freshmen or as college freshmen coming in from high school, but you also have to do so with the realization that they may or may not stay 4 years. I would not want to be the one who has to rearrange all those recruiting puzzle pieces right now of trying to figure that out. I do think there's a lot of buzz about Tennessee, particularly how well they have done in the transfer portal, how well they are expected to do. Nothing helps recruiting more than winning big, too. And if nothing helps NIL more than winning big, too. So if this team can cut nets, get a regular season championship, get an SEC tourney championship. I'm not saying all in 1 year. Get an elite or go if you want to go ahead and do it all in 1 year. But it's hard to double up the tournament and the regular season. It's not an easy feat. I mean, South Carolina didn't do it last year. Kentucky got them. So, get that Elite Eight. That's the big one. Get that Elite Eight net cut down. Get to the Final Four. I mean, win a national championship. Nothing boosts recruiting like that. That there's no substitute for that. Right now, Tennessee is selling a winning tradition, winning potential, and really an incredible culture. And I mean, let's be honest, in terms of even with Tennessee not having been to a Final Four since 2008, Tennessee basketball is still considered a standard bearer, a legacy program, a destination, what they call that, destination location. I mean, Tennessee women's basketball is still a big, big deal. Get this team to a national championship and you're golden for the rest of your life. I mean, at Tennessee. So I think the culture is, I think Kellie worked hard to recruit players that fit. She vets players. I mean, she could work for the FBI if she wanted to get out of coaching. They vet players, they vet parents, they call principals, they talk to AAU coaches, high school coaches. I think that's part of the culture is that they're getting people who fit that culture, who fit with the vision that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do, and Holly even said very candidly after she exited Tennessee, she said, I wish I'd recruited more glue players, not just the talent.
Mm-hmm.
The players that can come in and give you right what you need when you need it. The more, she recruited a whole lot of talent that never quite meshed. And Kellie's very deliberate with what she does, the decisions she makes. I mean, she's not saying she makes the right one every time, but she thinks them all through a lot. So I don't know if that answered the question, but a lot of it is the way they recruit and then what they present when they're here, the standard of behavior. I mean, you're not going to have coach allegations here of coaches, screaming at players. Kellie's not much of a screamer.
Yeah.
She also doesn't cuss. So, I mean, I can't say that I don't, so I'm not judging coaches that do, but she's not somebody whose personality lends itself to that kind of scenario. Does that mean she won't storm into the locker room and make very pointed remarks about what she wants done? Absolutely not. We've all seen that. I mean, there's a lot of Pat in her, and there's a lot of Kellie in Kellie. It's who Kellie is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. Rick Barnes same way. Like, he doesn't cuss and doesn't cuss you out, but he's mad at you, and he's not afraid to go off either. He doesn't have quite the commanding presence, I don't think, that Kellie Harper has, but both coaches Tennessee has in the basketball programs at UT. I would be afraid to make them mad. I would be afraid to mess up and not mess up in the fact that I just messed up, but mess up something that they've preached on and harped on that you should mess up. I would not want to get Kellie Harper or Rick Barnes mad at me in that scenario.
The one other thing I'll add is Kellie protects that locker room. Mm-hmm. Rick, and I love listening to his interviews, and he's been around a long time. He can make some very candid remarks about players. Yep. I mean, mm-hmm. Very candid. Kellie's style is she doesn't do that. Whatever issue she has with a player, they stay in that locker room. And I think Kellie does that because that's what she preferred as a player. And fully aware that Pat Summitt used the media to motivate players all the time. I mean, Pat's personality, Rick, you can get away with it. Kellie, I think she wants to make sure she's going to be she's very careful what she says about players in her interviews. Very, very careful. She takes care of things behind the scenes, and players are going to appreciate that, and their parents, particularly in the social media age. See, Pat didn't have to deal with that. If Pat had criticized a player before in social media, it would have dominated. It's an echo chamber. It can be overwhelming for the player. So I think it's a very good approach in this era of 24/7 news.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. Didn't really think about it that way, but Pat didn't coach in the social media era. The end of her coaching career came kind of around when Twitter was kind of getting bigger and becoming more of a thing that we use to talk about sports. That's a good point.
And if you miss the 11 p.m. newscast of sports, you didn't see it again. You didn't see clips all over Twitter, clip sound bites. It was a different era. Now you can clip anything, and it can go viral, or you could. Nobody really wants to go viral for the wrong reasons. So.
Yeah, I agree. So you mentioned NIL. We obviously talked about culture. This will be the last question we have here. It's the second one from Julia Gregg, and I thought this was an interesting one too. That's why I wanted to end on it. Her second question that she sent via the DMs was, has the culture outweighed the NIL deals for female athletes in getting transfers to commit to UT? I think that's interesting to talk about because we don't, surprisingly, I don't feel like there's been as much talk about NIL with women's athletics, but to me it's surprising because you look at the stat breakdowns of it. I remember seeing, you and I talked about this on the show, Maria. I think you and me, and also I think Cora Hall of Knox News did too. Like women's athletics in general, I think really women's basketball was one of the top three in like NIL earnings for like kind of the early stages of it when those numbers were released. I want to say earlier this year for like kind of the, I guess, last quarter or so of 2021. But women's basketball, I mean, a lot of that had to do with, look at what Paige Becker's got. Look kind of like the big stars of women's basketball got. But I mean, you look at Tennessee, you have Orange Mountain Designs, you have other stuff now with, Spire kind of trying to do a little bit more, other collectives trying to help out with the Lady Vols basketball specifically too, but just Lady Vols sports in general, just women's athletics at Tennessee. But I would say I would be interested more to hear your answer to that, because when I talked to the players, I didn't really ask them about NIL. Like I did ask Jazz Powell and Rakia, and oh my goodness, and Jillian. I didn't ask them specifically about NIL because I just didn't want to get into it. I didn't know if that was a bunch of conversations they'd had. I'd probably feel more comfortable asking, this time next year when I talk to commits and stuff like that about it, because it's been a whole year and a half, almost 2 years of NIL being a conversation. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, Maria, because I personally think, just from what I've seen and heard and talked to from the players and just other stuff too, I actually do think the culture played a larger part than NIL did. I think maybe, I don't think that to me, even in football where the money's really being thrown around, I don't think the majority of players are making the decision based solely off NIL. Even the ones that are getting a lot of money, I don't think it's solely based off NIL, because those guys can make that money really anywhere. If you can make $1 million at one school for NIL, you can probably make $1 million at another school. So I think, to me, the NIL plays a factor in it. But really, it's still, I think, the majority, anywhere between 95 to 98% of the student, or the high school recruits, the transfers out there in all sports, are making the decisions based off of fit, off of relationships, and off of playing time more than they are NIL. And I think NIL plays into it, because if you're coming from a small school to a Tennessee, obviously that's going to be a big school. If you're coming from just for example, Jasmine Franklin coming from Missouri State to Tennessee, that's obviously a lot more of an NIL opportunity for her. Just even really, I don't know how much Missouri State even has NIL for the women's basketball program there. So that's obviously a bigger opportunity for her there. But there was also the fact that she had the opportunity to play for Tennessee. She knew Coach Kellie Harper. And Tennessee had the need for her for playing time for another kind of post position. So I think, to me, I would say yes, but I want to hear your answer, because you're obviously more in the weeds in it than I am. But I think, just based off of the things I know just from talking to some of the athletes and stuff, that I think NIL plays a part, but I think culture played a bigger part in Tennessee being as attractive as it has been to the transfers this past year or so.
I think both are factors, but I would agree with you that right now, I think culture is a bigger factor. And I agree also, if you're a top player, I mean, the NIL opportunities are going to be there, because if you're a top player, you're probably going to go to a high profile school. And the big money, there's been, some cases of it, different places, but it's not routine right now on the women's side of the game. So I know, for Rakia Jackson, I mean, I think the opportunity for it was certainly a bonus, but was she shopping for a new school based just on NIL opportunities? No. I do think, for a transfer player that may have 1, maybe 2 years to capitalize on it, I do believe a higher profile program would gain an edge, because the advertisers or the people with goods or cars. I mean, you've seen her Instagram. That's a Michigan dealership with that car she has. That is a very, very nice ride. If she stays at Mississippi State, does she get that? No. I mean, just to be blunt, no. I mean, you come to Tennessee, that opportunity opens up. There may be an isolated case here or there where there's such a good deal at an NIL school, as booster money becomes more involved, that type of thing, where a player's like, I'm going there. This is where I can make the most NIL or impact. But I also can't see a player going somewhere and not liking the school, not liking the coach, not liking, not feeling like you fit in. I mean, you're still 18, 19 years old. This is one of the biggest decisions of your life. Now, if it's life-changing money, I certainly understand, NIL is, month to month, year to year. If players aren't happy where they are right now, they can transfer, but I don't see NIL ever becoming the factor. Will it be a big factor? Yeah, it's going to get bigger. We'll see that as time goes on. I mean, we're still only at 1 year into this and there's different state law. I mean, right now there's no uniform consistency.
Right.
In one state, you can do this. You can't do it in this state. You can hire this person to help. No, you can't do it that in this state. I mean, initially, Tennessee couldn't use the logo, the Tennessee of the Lady Vol logo. That was the initial ruling. Then state law changed. And now you're seeing, on the men's side, women's side, the logo with the shirt. So this is still in its infancy of determining what it could be. I mean, yes, with football, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that Arch Manning apparently has not pursued anything, but I've seen the estimates of what he could be worth.
Yeah.
And so has it changed college sports? Absolutely. But where you fit, where you practice, I mean, the NIL money, if you don't perform, is not going to come. It may come initially based on who you are, but let's say your team doesn't do well or you don't do well. I mean, there's the one thing about being that when you become an NIL athlete, it forces you to grow up maybe a little bit quicker than you wanted to, because now you're responsible for your name, image, and likeness. And you have to be very careful how you manage that. But for players who want to go pro, who intend to go pro, it's like an internship almost of figuring that whole process out. So I think culture definitely is more important right now than NIL, but I can see how they would coexist. I mean, NIL is a big deal. I mean, the fact that Tennessee had Orange Mountain Designs, a store that had been in place, 14 years, 13 years when it came through, was able, already had the vendors, already had the licensing, you could move right into that. I think that is beneficial for Tennessee and will be beneficial going forward. But I mean, the top coaches know where this is going, and all of them are trying to figure out what can I and what can I not do, because it's not it's not really clear. It changes a lot. So there's been some high dollar women contracts, and I would say more are coming. But like you said, if you're really good, the opportunities are going to come. Now, does that also mean those opportunities are more plentiful in a higher profile market? I mean, absolutely. Like I said, Rakia Jackson at Mississippi State is not having a Michigan dealership offer her a vehicle as part of NIL. Rakia Jackson at Tennessee is, because Tennessee is a name program. Do I think that affected her decision? I think it was a factor, but I think she made it perfectly clear. I am looking for a place where it feels like family, where it feels like I fit in, where the teammates are pulling for each other, where I'm comfortable with my team. Because all the NIL is great, particularly if you can find a way to pocket some of that money, leave college not only without, debt, but leave with some, at least a little nest egg of some kind. But that's not going to get you through that 6 a.m. workout and that long bus ride or that long plane ride and class the next morning. The system around you, what's in place, the support system, your coaches, your teammates, the academics. I mean, you still need a college degree. I mean, women need to, you're not going to see women leaving early without a degree. And I mean, you've got to get that degree, get your education. So I've long been a champion of the players being compensated in some way. I have Time Hop on my phone because it's an Android, and I came across a post I made 12 years ago, because now I've been on social media that long, where I was arguing that the players, need a stipend of some kind. They need to be able to pay, that they should be able to sell T-shirts in the store that has their number and on it, but they can't make any profit from it. I'm like, yeah, I've been pretty consistent with this. That was me 11 years ago saying this. So I'm glad to see it's here. I know some people don't like it. I'm not in that camp. I think the players deserve it big time.
I'm right there with you. I think they do too. And to kind of close that out, I was looking at this article on Biz Women business. Well, actually, technically it's Biz Journals, at the Biz Women section there, that was written back in April after kind of a lot of that, the thing I was referencing earlier, talking about kind of where the sports ranked in NIL. They also talked about some of the specific deals. They were talking about a Yahoo Sports report that Paige Beckers can make up to $63,000 for a single social media post, which at the time was more than 9 male players in the Sweet 16 combined. So 9 of the male athletes who were playing in the Sweet 16 at the time combined. She's making more more than they were on a single social media post, reportedly, because she has almost 1 million followers at the time on Instagram. Probably has more than that now. She also is currently filing a trademark for Paige Buckets, which I didn't know. But you also had Stanford's Haley Jones, who has deals with Beats by Dre, cryptocurrency company, and also the NBA 2K video game. And then you also had Jones talk, different quotes and stuff here too, talking about how you have to build your brand while as an amateur. Just a lot of different stuff here. There's one other one on here from South Carolina Zia Cook, and also Iowa's Caitlin Clark signed a deal with H&R Block to highlight the talking about kind of why companies seem to more willing to work with the female athletes than the male athletes, because for one, the women have had more. Just seems like they were willing to engage with their fans on social media, but also is because many are more comfortable speaking out on social issues, which is why Cook and Caitlin Clark signed a deal with H&R Block apparently to highlight the inequalities in college athletics in a $1 million program called Fair Shot. So I thought it was just kind of interesting to leave it there. If y'all just, I don't know, I just searched kind of women's basketball NIL, and there's the Biz Journals article. I might link it into the show notes. We'll see. But that was really just kind of a cool little in-depth thing. And again, Lady Vols, I imagine, again, with Rakia Jackson, with Jordan Horst and Tamari Key, they're going to be some high-profile NIL deals, I think, coming their way at some point too. But thank you to all of you who asked questions. Again, y'all are up here on the screen. Again, we'll have to have another Lady Vol one at some point, because this was fun. This is the first Lady Vol specific mailbag episode that we've done. I loved it. This was fun. This is great. We'll have to do one probably closer to the season, maybe even once the season starts, Maria, but maybe even have Cora on to do one as well. But I really appreciate you taking time to do this and to answer the questions, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners loved it as well, to getting your feedback on their questions. So I'll let you, as always, kind of plug anything you want to plug that you've written recently or have coming down the wire, because I know it's in the off season, but as you said, there's never really an off season technically. I know from my time in sports media, there's not really ever an off season. So feel free to plug anything you've written recently that you would like, or that's again coming down the wire that you have or are writing currently.
First, I want to apologize for my incredibly poorly behaved cats. Everyone but Puff the entire evening has been nothing but disruptive. They're not team players. So I hope you enjoyed them. They have knocked, y'all won't even turn the computer so you can see my desk. They have wrecked my desk on the other side of me, just knocking things over and being general pest. But if there's one thing I will mention to people, this team is going to be fun to watch. Just don't cue. Here comes another one. Season tickets sales end this week. If you want to get yourself to allvols.com, I would highly recommend getting season tickets to see the Lady Vols basketball team this season. They're going to be fun to watch. They're going to play fast. They've got shooters. They got scorers. They got defenders. If you've been on the fence about season tickets, now is the time. So you got the end of this week to renew or buy new season ticket plans. So get over to allvols.com. If you break my new television, this is getting out of control now. They're trying to knock the television over.
Well, good news is we're almost done. So get you out of here to take care of them.
That was the one thing I wanted to point out to people. And yes, GoVols247.com and Knox TN Today. In fact, I'll have a column up every Wednesday there, and I'll be writing one just my general thoughts, stuff going on. So just keeping the coverage going. Appreciate you having me, Nathaniel. And you can edit out the cats or leave them in. Doesn't matter to me. Everybody can see my poorly behaved little fur children.
I'll probably leave that last bit in there. That was too funny to cut out. So this is also the end of the show too. So. Well, Maria, I'll let you go tend to the cats so they don't destroy your house. I'm sure they're wanting attention or food or something. So I appreciate you coming on here, Maria. I appreciate, again, all of you all who send in questions and who listen and watch the show every week as well. Signing off for Maria, I'm Nathaniel, and this has been another episode of Lady Vol Basketball Fever.